Okay, just when you all started talking again, I'm going to interrupt you. So, for those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Kim Pate. I have the privilege and responsibility and wonderful advantage of being both in two roles this year. One is in this College of Law at the University of Saskatchewan as the Ariel Sallows Chair in Human Rights. And that's been wonderful to be here. And also as the Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies. And so today and tomorrow we have a wonderful lineup of incredible people both here participating, presenting, and being part of this initiative. And I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional territory on which we have the privilege of meeting and the privilege of living and working, and that I have been so warmly welcomed this past year. And that is Treaty 6 territory, the home of the Cree, the Oji Cree, and the Plains Cree, and the home of the Métis Nation. And it has been, for the 32 years that I have done the work that I've had the privilege and responsibility of doing with young people, with men and with women in prison, every day that I walk in, and more importantly, I'm able to walk out of prisons, the impact of colonization is very clear and present. And the conference, we've tried to focus on an array of issues that many of you are intimately aware of. And we've tried to have a range of people who have studied this work, who have legislated in this area, who have advocated in this area, and who work very directly in prisons, in the community, trying to address these issues of marginalized, victimized, criminalized, and institutionalized women and girls. And so when we talked about what we needed to do, we talked about the situation that is the Canadian crisis right now in this country, in particular, the over-representation and the incredible over-criminalization of those who are most marginalized, and in particular, Indigenous women and Indigenous peoples, but particularly Indigenous women and those with mental health issues. And that's the reason we talked about the Canadian crisis. But it's one that we want to be not just of the horrible, tragic realities of what we're facing, but also a message of hope. And so when you wander through the conference and you participate in the presentations, I hope that you're thinking of those things. So you start by being starkly presented with the Red Dress Redress installation that Jamie Black envisioned and brought to this, first to the University of Winnipeg, University of Manitoba, sorry, is now installed in the Human Rights Museum, has been at UBC, has been all over the place, and in the fall was here at the University of Saskatchewan. And we have the great privilege of having Jamie here yesterday to install the dresses and to bring that message here. And the Red Dress, if you don't know the Red Dress Redress Project, it was conceived of Jamie to draw attention to the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women. She used the color red because of the significance in terms of its sacredness as representing lifeblood and the life that women have, but also the blood that has been spilled and the deaths of so many women. In addition to the Red Dress Project and the installation, we asked Native Women's Association, we thank Teresa for bringing the faceless dolls to us, because similarly the Native Women's Association was one of the first with Amnesty International and the Aboriginal Women's Action Network in this country to draw attention to the number of women who are going missing, and the faceless dolls brings another form of life to the horrible and tragic deaths of too many Aboriginal and Indigenous women in this country. And so we start with that. As you go down the stairs from the displays down, you'll see there's a segregation cell. And I want to thank the Department of Drama here and who helped us put together the segregation cell, and Cara Moen, who's here, who has helped to put together the visual impact of segregation. And she and I and Lori were here hanging things till late last night, and I want to encourage you to go there, because you see what happens when we don't deal with the very real social justice, economic justice, cultural and racial injustice, and the sexual injustice that exists in this country, and how many of our Indigenous women end up in isolation. So you're thinking probably now, and where is the hope, Kim? So the hope is that at our last meeting, and we have combined the conference with the annual general meeting of the Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry Societies, and last year one of the women who spent far, far too many years, decades in custody at the prison for women, has really pushed for us to work on what is called a Tiny Homes Initiative. Many of you will know that initiative in various forms. And so we have been, and some of you know that in a couple of years I plan to take that trades training course at our local college and plan to start that as my, maybe when I grow up I'll figure out what I want to do sort of thing. But we plan to try and launch that across the country. And so at 11, Lydia, who built her own tiny home, will be here. And so at lunchtime I encourage you to go out. The tiny home is the tiny home that's on the property just in front of the law school. I was threatening Dean Bilson that I might actually move in and, not only did you get me to be here in the College of Law, but you might actually have me living on campus and squatting and trying to change the rules, because I think that should be an art installation in the art part of the university, and Lydia should be able to live here and attend college and do her baking work at the same time. So just a little plug, and I know we've got some great law students. I'm sure we'll think up the legal arguments for how that can happen. So we wanted to talk about what we should be seeing. Every woman, child, and man in this country can and should be. We're a rich country. They can and should be housed, clothed, educated, and be able to live to their full potential. And so one of the things we want to ensure is that we see what some of those potentials are. Women could be learning those trades in the community, and if they are in prison and we don't manage to successfully keep them from going to prison, they could be learning them there, and they could be building their own homes and in sweat equity, engaging in activities that will allow women who have been homeless, women who have been in shelters for battered women, women who have been in jail, to actually have places to live. So I encourage you to look at that, as well as listen to all the fabulous presentations. So you've heard enough of me for now. I do want to say that I'm very sorry that there is an illness in one of our elders' families. So Elder Maria Campbell, who is associated with the college here, is not able to join us. And Chief Jonathan, who is going to be here representing both the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations and the Assembly of First Nations, was unfortunately admitted to hospital. So we all send our best positive energy for her good health, and we will miss her. But we are joined by two elders, and I would like to first call on Agnes Desjardins to join us. Agnes is someone who has spent a long, long time. I don't know if you'd mind me saying decades, but I know it's decades. It's decades that I've known you, so decades working in and around the prison system with many of the women we know, and is well known in this community. And I thank you very much for joining us, Agnes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Agnes Desjardins, and I'm an elder. I work at the Regional Psychiatric Center. Before I start this prayer, I just wanted to say that it's good to see so many people here, so many women, and some men that are here too. I was asked by one of my coworkers if there were any men invited. I said, yeah, there should be. So anyway, I'm going to start off by saying a prayer. I was given an offering by Kim Pate, and if you just bear with me, I'd just like to say a short prayer just to start this day off for this conference. Unchimala Tankashala, Unchia Nukasa. I want to pray today for a good day, for this gathering of women and men, and for the work that the people sponsoring this work conference have done. So I just want to start off by praying for the good health of all the people that are in this room. I pray for that guidance and understanding, and I want to pray that each person here has an open mind, and I think everybody that's here is here to get more understanding, and I think with some of the things that a lot of people in this country are doing with women, men in prison, men and women in prisons, and the children, our children, and also Aboriginal people and all people that are have different kind of struggles. So I just want to pray for these people because they're doing a hard job, and I just pray that you continue to watch over them and help them with what they're trying to do for all our people. And for the people that traveled to come here, I want to pray and give thanks that they had good journeys, and I want to pray that you watch over them and guide them and help them have good journeys back to their homes. Watch over them, protect them, and keep them all safe. And I pray that you bless them all with happiness today. Mitakvayas in all my relations. Okay. Okay. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the work that I do. I'm an elder. Now I'm an elder, but when I was younger, I called myself a pipe holder because I carry a woman's pipe, and so I've been working with women in prisons for it's going on 20 years, I think, and I'm also a residential school survivor. So working in prisons was kind of hard too, because I found being in the prisons kind of reminded me a lot of the way things were in a residential school, and then I just got to understand how much the women needed to help guidance, to find guidance from elders and chaplains, and what I realized was they all need spirituality in their lives. So that's one thing I like to encourage the women to believe in something. Maybe they're not following the Indian way, but if they're following God or whoever, you need to have that spiritual base, and from there it helps you to build their spirit up a little bit, and from there they seem to start growing and start learning to respect themselves as women, and it takes years. Like, there's some women I've met when I first started working here, and I've seen the changes in them, and because a lot of the women and the men have grown up with a lot of abuse and trauma in their lives, and so it's really good to see the ones that are able to come out of that situation, and not once they leave prison that they're able to stay out of prison. And there's a few that really make that change, and some it takes time, and sometimes I think it's hard for people, the staff, like where I work, to understand that, you know, with all the abuse that a person has been through, like they're not gonna make changes in a year, in 2 years, you know, it's a lifetime because of some of the abuses that they've been through. So for me, I've raised my family also, and but working with the prisons is something that helped me with my life too, because I think it's helped me keep on track, because I come from a dysfunctional family too, because of the residential school era that I went through. So, but I've survived, and that's something I like to share with the people, and especially with the women and the men that need to hear stories of people, you know, coming through what they have, you know, the struggles. And I share my life, you know, with the men and the women, my life stories, and for some it's such a good feeling to see some of them that really want to make the change in their lives and not get stuck in that revolving door of prison life. So well, that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes, and thank you for reminding us that it's too often a pretty clear trajectory from residential schools or from the challenges to criminalization. And it's part of why our organization talks about the fact that we work with women who are criminalized, not women who are in conflict with the law. We used to say that. We don't anymore, because it's increasingly the systems, the economic systems, the social justice systems, the educational systems, and the mental health systems that are actually coming into conflict with people's lives. And just, I have to say it because today a decision came down that is not as good as we had hoped. Native Women's Association and ourselves intervened in the case, Kokanapis, which was before the Supreme Court of Canada, and decision came down today, and it's a bit wishy-washy, and we were arguing that women in particular deserve to have Aboriginal women on juries when they're being tried, because they will understand the reality of their lives. And it is no accident who gets jailed. It certainly isn't the most privileged who end up there. So I also now have the opportunity and privilege of inviting Elder John Sugar to join us, and we're very pleased he was able to join us. I have known of John for a very long time, but we only just met. And I know of John because I've known his sister and his daughter and his niece and nieces for a very long time. And I thank you very, very much for joining us, John, and look forward to your words.
Me taki ape, kaki ono te wagamatik, the naskumut in our. I'd just like to say thank you for your presence and the honor of coming here on behalf of the organizers, Kim Pate. I thank you. I thank each of you, ladies, gentlemen, on behalf of this conference and what it represents. Very strong. The awareness that has to be brought forth. Working together and understanding each other with different departments and corrections and government organizations and agencies. Learning how to come together in a good way such as this as we're doing today. I'd like to acknowledge our elder, Lady Elder, give her thanks for her words, her presence. I'm going to offer a little prayer and share a few words on behalf of Aboriginal offenders, on behalf of First Nations people in terms of the social issues affecting us on a daily basis in the contemporary society. With that, if I could have your moment, give thanks for today, such a beautiful day today. me takiape, ate atawaha takatan kashla. O pilawasti te wapigachi no pake. Me takiape, chawaha we wangmachi. Wanaji oha koshi hati wahe. Peramai do tankashla pejota. Mini wachoni tankashla, we chinan. Tate topa o mani mishiado, metakia pe weo peatakia, waziatakia, weo hinyapatakia, itokaha takia. Anchi maka taka shela, peramaido wopeda, o metaquias. You know, on behalf of my family, on behalf of my relations, as an ex-Aboriginal offender, I understand the process of incarceration. I understand the intergenerational effects of colonization and assimilation. I understand the process of being a product of that process. Saying that, learning how to overcome the barriers, the obstacles that are put before us as Indigenous peoples is not the same as our peoples, our women. I have family members, female family members, still incarcerated today, going through the process of understanding, coming forth in who they are as individuals. I remember the introduction of First Nations culture and spiritual practices in the prison system. I was there. Many of the people, I see a few of the members here from those days, still here today, still advocating, still fighting for the cause and the right that belongs to Indigenous peoples. You take a look at the rehabilitation process. What is rehabilitation? That word and that term alone, has so many. For me, rehabilitation is understanding a process of choices that we made to get involved in the correctional system. Getting in conflict with the law and what it represents. You take a look at our women. Our women are more prone to abuse in the system than any other race. Indigenous women have so much struggles in the prison system. There are so many barriers. We have so many experts. We are overrepresented. And yet, nothing is being done in a healthy way in terms of identity. You take a look at the policies and how they affect each individual that crosses through those gates. I remember I was 16 years old, walking into the prison, Edmonton Institution, a maximum security institution for men. 16 years old. I was still a child myself. And growing up in the system and understanding that process was a hard realization. Today I give thanks for that experience. The choices I made were very wrong, but the crimes that I've committed to put me in a place such as that. However, knowing in the growth, the development of understanding, we weren't even allowed to braid a sweetgrass. Our sisters in prison for women in Kingston, Ontario, when it was still available, it was the only prison for women, Aboriginal women. There was so much conflict, so much death, so much suicide, that the elders in the community of that area introduced and called upon elders, pipe carriers from around the country in the U.S. When that culture and that spiritual practice of First Nations spiritualism were introduced, still today, many practices are discriminatory in terms of actually having it done. Walking into a prison, I remember the first sweat lodge. The very first sweat lodge that we were invited and were able to host. We had every 10 yards a van full of correctional officers with their guns. Minus 30 below outside. Bad winter storm, and they're all around the perimeter. And we were in a cage less than the size, a quarter of this room. There was 23 men, an elder and a helper. We went inside that sweat lodge and we gave thanks. You know, I've never turned back. I never looked back from that day. I knew there had to be something different in my life instead of prison. I knew there had to be an understanding in a better way. I went in with a grade 8 education. I thought I knew everything. That's how arrogant and how stupid I was. As human beings, we always think we have an answer for everything. Learning that process and those choices of loneliness and self-sacrifice of pain, I can only imagine what my daughter's going through. I can only imagine what our female relations go through each day without their children, without their families. Learning to stand up and fight for their spirit, such as I did. I crawled into that sweat lodge. I gave thanks, and I never looked back. Today I work in a variety of different areas, mental health and addictions. I work with performing arts, Saskatchewan Native Theatre here in Saskatoon, the Core Neighborhood Youth Co-op. We offer a variety of different programs in the area of culture, of identity. We empower our youth through the introduction of spiritualism and practices of First Nations identity in the Cree culture and the Sioux culture. Our women's programs, very successful. Our young women. You take a look at the social issues affecting our communities. What are they? We have so many, and yet we have the answer right before us. What are we actually doing about it? This conference and how it's being conducted and hosted, I thank the organizers in terms of bringing that awareness to social issues affecting our Indigenous women that are incarcerated, that are in conflict with the law, the ones that are on the street, the children that are hungry, the children that are in care. These are issues that are playing today that we have to address. Regardless of the story, my story, I share a little bit with you. Let's have an awesome day, beautiful spring day, you know. God took pity on us and gave us a little bit of warmth. With that, mitakuias.
Thank you, Elder John Sugar and Elder Agnes Desjardins, for starting us off in a good way. And it is a beautiful, warm day. And it's a very warm day, in fact, and I'm told that it's always a warm day this sort of week before the air conditioning comes on. But hey, I've been told by all the Saskatoonians and Saskatchewanians that, and I have been welcomed in. I mean, when I went to Nova Scotia, I was still very much a come from away girl, but here they've welcomed me in, and they've warned me, you know, it was a really warm winter, and I'm thinking, that was before I agreed to stay until December, but, and I'd say, well, it's really cold. They go, oh yes, but it's a dry cold, not like Ottawa. I'd be going, it's a cold, and those of you know me, though, there was also some expletives in there too. It's a cold. But anyway, we got through the winter, and now we have this beautiful warmth, and we will enjoy it. We will have the fans to try and relieve it, and you'll have breaks to be able to go out into the air and enjoy the natural breeze. Fortunately, it's not the natural breeze we had on the weekend, which blew all the herbs that I'd planted right out of the garden, but we will have a nice time. So now I would like to introduce Dean Beth Bilson, who has been sometimes I will, those of you know me know, I'm not really good at standing on ceremony, and so I'll sometimes refer to, okay, all of you, the titled and untitled. And so Dean Bilson is the third time dean at the Faculty of Law, and she has been very welcoming, and I asked her to join us and bring greetings on behalf of the faculty and the staff and the students and the entire College of Law. So thank you very much, Beth, for joining us.
Well, I too would like to acknowledge that the College of Law is located on traditional territory, traditional Treaty 6 territory, and the home of the Métis Nation. And I'd like, on behalf of the College of Law, to welcome all of you to the College of Law and to this conference, which I think is going to be an exciting event. Ariel Sallows was a graduate of this college in the 1940s, and he practiced law in North Battleford, Saskatchewan as a sole practitioner for his whole career. Sometime in the late 1970s or early 1980s, Ariel Sallows, prompted by some vision, and no doubt a vision which was no doubt nurtured by the then dean, Don Clark, Ariel Sallows had decided that he wanted to create a chair in the College of Law in the area of human rights. And so he gave a large donation to the College of Law to endow a chair in human rights, which has been established in his name. And that great gift has allowed the College of Law to entertain a series of wonderful human rights scholars who have been here for periods of between 6 months and 2 years, who have had an astonishing array of backgrounds. We have had people who were Islamic scholars. We have had people who were engaged in community organizations. We have had people from international human rights agencies, and they have brought stimulation and new perspectives to the faculty and the students in the College of Law. And one of the great gifts from Ariel Sallows has been Kim Pate, who has been with us this year. And as she indicated, she has agreed to stay on for another 6 months, and that is wonderful news because it will allow her to do a reprise of her very popular course in prison law and human rights, which the students who took it really found very enlightening and very provocative. And I think if you talk to any of the students who took it, you would find that it was an amazing experience for them. Kim has also been involved in a number of public events. She's given public lectures. She's been involved in a number of symposiums and other kinds of public dialogue. She has become very engaged with the local community, and she has spent an enormous amount of time putting together this conference, and I think it's going to be I think you will all enjoy it very much. So if Kim really does want to move into a tiny house next door, we would all be delighted with that. But I have to confirm for her the statement of whoever told her that it really was quite a mild winter this year, and she might not be as lucky another time. So thank you, Kim, and welcome to all of you, and have a great couple of days in the College of Law.
It's always funny to hear yourself referred to as a scholar. Those of you who know me know I feel like a bit of an interloper in the academic community. But thank you very much, and for joining us and welcoming us, Beth. So I'd now like to call on someone who I had certainly heard about before I came to Saskatchewan, and he was the first person to call me on the phone. And those of you who know what a techno-twit I am, I couldn't figure out how to answer my phone. So it went to voicemail, and then I had to find people to help me figure out how to find the voicemail. And it was the Honorable Judge Arnot, who is chair of the Human Rights Commission. So you can imagine I didn't put a very good impression, I'm sure, as the chair of the Human Rights Commission, I'm trying to fumble, and I've got him on speakerphone, and I'm yelling at the phone, and I don't know how to deal with this. And he's inviting me to come speak to the Human Rights Commission, which really then surprised me, given the impression I'd already created. So, but he was, Judge Arnot is well known in this community. He was treaty commissioner. He's also a judge who is obviously not sitting right now as he's chairing the Human Rights Commission, and has been doing some very important work, including they did some important work that around the sidewalks of Saskatchewan. And those of you who are my Facebook friends know that I was astonished to find that the sidewalks started and ended in half blocks. And when you're someone who's walking everywhere in the winter, and then you notice these things. And so I was very happy to hear that they had taken that on, along with a number of other issues. And I'm very, very pleased that you've joined us, both to provide a session, but also to help welcome us to Saskatchewan. So thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, elders, for your prayers this morning, and thank you, Kim, for inviting me to give a few words of welcome to everyone here at this conference. I really want to thank the organizers. I think the conference is really substantive, and there's so many people with great knowledge that we're all going to come away from this conference with a better understanding and perhaps a better view of what we need to do in Saskatchewan and in Canada to deal with the crisis that's been identified. I do want to say that I did phone Kim. I was very aware that she wasn't technologically savvy. I could hear that. But the fact is, I think Kim Pate has really taken the chair, the Sallows chair, and used it very, very effectively. And I'm really pleased that she's here to have done that. And of course, if you know her, she's very energetic, very dynamic, and very passionate, and that passion is infectious, and we're all the beneficiaries of that here in Saskatchewan, and certainly with this conference in Canada, with the way that she's addressed these issues. The criminality and the imprisonment of Indigenous women and individuals who have disabling mental health issues deserves our fullest attention in Saskatchewan for sure, and in Canada. You know, the fundamental root causes of these issues, in my opinion, really are founded on poverty, racial discrimination, and gender discrimination. Particularly in Saskatchewan, this has a real impact in this province for so many reasons. If you want to see a picture of Saskatchewan in the future, look at the demographics of today. And they'll show you that the median age of Aboriginal people in Saskatchewan is 21. The median age of non-Aboriginal people is 41. There's a whole tsunami of change coming here with an overwhelming demographic shift. Demography determines destiny. That picture of the future needs to change. The status quo is unacceptable, it's unsustainable, and we need to take action to address those issues. Now, I believe that the outcomes of the conference here today will generate some great ideas, no doubt. I hope some constructive policy, and I hope some strategic action. The whole community has a responsibility to deal with these issues, and we need to engage the whole community to understand that certainly there's a crisis, and if we don't deal with this, it will become a social chaos. I do want to say that the Human Rights Commission is one vector in dealing with these issues. And in Saskatchewan, we're creating a pedagogy from grades K to 12 that answers the question, what does it mean to be a Canadian citizen? What are the rights of citizenship? But more importantly, what are the responsibilities that go with those rights? And how do you build and maintain respect for every citizen? Why? Because every citizen deserves equal moral consideration. That pedagogy will be ready in September of 2016 for every grade in every school in Saskatchewan. I'm really heartened by that because I think if we can change the attitudes in the community, you have to do it by changing the attitudes in the school system first, and hopefully we'll hit a tipping point. The foundation of that pedagogy is to try to build a citizen who is an enlightened citizen, an empathetic citizen, an engaged citizen, and an ethical citizen. So we call it the 3 R's, rights, responsibility, and respect, founded on the 4 E's: enlightenment, engagement, empathy, and ethical citizenship. I look forward to the conference. I look forward to the dialogue. I look forward to the opportunities here today to meet with you and to perhaps build some collaborative approaches here in Saskatchewan for sure, and hopefully in Canada on these issues. I thank you very much. I look forward to the conference. Have a good conference. Thank you.
I was remiss in not pointing you, they're in your program, so you'll see it, but Chancellor Favel was also hoping to join us and then was not able to. So there's a message from Blaine Favel in your program, and I want to thank him very much for that message. He has been a long-time friend. I've known Blaine, actually a very, very dear friend, Trish Montour, first introduced us when he was at law school, and I've followed the trajectory of his incredible career ever since then. And so he was very sorry to miss this, and sends greetings to all of you, and also send a personal thanks to the College of Law, to the National Association, and the local Elizabeth Fry Society for all the work. And so I also want to thank everybody here, and we will do that thank you more formally later, but none of these sorts of conferences happens in isolation, and all of the people who are here have been part of that. It's now my great pleasure to introduce to you someone who I have watched do incredible work. First, she was here as an academic, or that wasn't first what she was, but I know her first as an academic. Lillian Dyck is a member of the Gordon First Nation in Saskatchewan. She's first generation Chinese Canadian as well. And the Honorable Dr. Lillian Eva Kwan Dyck is well known for advocating for equity in the education and employment of women, Chinese Canadians, and Aboriginal peoples. She is the first female First Nation senator and first Canadian-born Chinese senator. Woohoo! Lillian earned her Bachelor of Arts and Honors Bachelor of Arts, Master of Science degrees in biochemistry in, I'm not going to say when, but, you know, a little while ago. And as well as her PhD in biological psychiatry, all here at the University of Saskatchewan. She was conferred a Doctor of Letters, honoris causa, by Cape Breton University in 2007, and she has been recognized in many, many ways by the National Aboriginal Achievement Awards for Science and Technology in 1999, a YWCA Woman of Distinction Award for Science and Technology and the Environment, and she's received 2 Eagle Feathers in 2005. She also was here as a full professor in neuropsychiatry, and before she was appointed to the Senate of Canada. And of course, where I have come to know Senator Dyck most is in her position as senator, and have appeared before her, and she is always a very clear-thinking, direct to the point, analytical senator, and really does give voice and meaning to our Senate when we think of it as the place of sober second thought. I just wish there were more of you there who had that ilk. And that's not a political statement. It's not a political statement. It's merely a statement that we need that right now more than ever. And I know it's not through lack of effort on your part, because you've been doing your darndest to try and get the Senate and the country to hear different perspectives, and I appreciate that. And I thank you very much for joining us. I know that you're having challenges as well with, and we're very, very happy that you're able to join us. So thank you.
Good morning to you all. It's wonderful to see a full room, and I want to acknowledge the previous speakers, to give my thanks to Elders Agnes Desjardins and Elders John Sugar, to our previous speakers, to Dean Bilson, and to Judge David Arnot. Whoa. I've got this little speech that I sort of sketched together, but of course, when you actually get up to speak, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to follow your script. And one of the things that one of the first elders that I met with taught me was to speak with not just your mind, but also with your heart. But being a scientist by training, I'm used to using my mind and not my heart. And I think I chose that deliberately because some things are so difficult, you don't want to use your heart. And I know in this room, you're all using your mind and your hearts in your work. And for that, I congratulate you, because the work you do is very difficult, and it requires that heart for you to keep going because you care. And for that, I thank you very much. As you heard, there is an overrepresentation of Aboriginal people in the prison system. And you know, I thank God. I can't believe that I ended up where I am, because the odds are that I wouldn't be there. And I was very fortunate that my mother, who was a residential school survivor, believed in education. She died when I was quite young. I was about 10 and a half, but she left with us a very strong message that we had to have an education. And I was very blessed that between the combination of the Cree and the Chinese, we were very good in school, both my brother and I. So we excelled in school. We were both very good at science. And so we were geared to go to university by our high school science teachers. So that led me on to the path of greater education. And somehow, you know, being a marginalized person, a woman of visible minority, I had my challenges throughout my life. And as a professional, I made it a personal commitment that I would go out and I would talk to various people about discrimination, about racism, even though as a scientist, I was not encouraged to do that. In fact, I was told not to do that. I think that's what got me to the Senate, because to be a senator, you have to have a public life. You have to do something that shows that you care. And that's what I did. Even though it was detrimental to my career, I knew that it was important to do, so I kept doing it. And so in 2005, to my great surprise, I received a call from former Prime Minister Paul Martin's office asking if I would be a senator. And I thought, first I thought it was an April Fool's Day joke because it was close to the April 1st. And his assistant said, Paul Martin would like you to be a senator. And I thought, well, what does a senator do? Probably like most Canadians, I really didn't know much about the Senate. And they asked me to tell them right away, yes or no. And I said, well, I need time to think about it. And, you know, can you tell me what my duties and responsibilities would be? And he said, look it up on the web. So I went to the web, didn't really say anything. So I said, well, I need a day to think about it. And they said, no, okay, but you can't tell anyone. And if you do tell someone, they rescind the offer. So I said, okay, I won't tell anyone. I'll just go home and I'll talk to my dog. So Teddy, what should I do? And, you know, basically I thought, I don't know what I'm getting into, but I know this is an opportunity. And I know there's no guarantee that the next person that's asked will be an Aboriginal woman. So I thought I have to say yes, because I thought it was important to get that voice into the Senate chamber. So that's been my commitment. When I arrived in the Senate, I thought, well, what do? I guess I continue on the priorities that I considered important: education, Aboriginal women, the missing and murdered Indigenous women, which we had just started a group here in Saskatoon in 2005, 10 years ago, that started to work on that issue. And this morning coming through here, I came in through the back door and walking through the red dresses, it was just so overwhelming. That's why I'm so emotional. You know, and when I wear my Senate pin, which is red, I will remember this day. I didn't get a chance to see the red dress exhibit when it was here previously, so it's had a big impact on me. I carry memories of those women, and I've spent a lot of my time in the Senate addressing that issue, pushing for a national inquiry. I know you don't have that specifically on your topic today, and I was very happy that Kim had introduced it when she spoke earlier. But you know, in the criminal justice system, you have the so-called victims and you have the so-called offenders. And you know, today and over the next couple of days, you'll be focusing on the offenders. But there are also the victims, the missing and murdered Indigenous women, for example. Neither group has received the justice that they deserve. With the offenders, there at least is some hope because there was put in place for offenders the so-called GLADU principles. So that meant when you had an Aboriginal offender before the courts, you could have a GLADU report, which was supposed to outline the circumstances of that offender, which was supposed to be taken into consideration when that person is sentenced. So for example, if that person came from, you know, a lifetime of terrible abuse, you know, from a child welfare system, whatever, where they've been abused as a child, and that had, you know, left them very seriously scarred, and therefore somehow they fell off the path and became involved in criminal activity. Those were supposed to be taken into account when sentencing occurred. So that was a factor that was supposed to help. Unfortunately, we see now in the present government that those principles are being weakened. That we have seen 2 bills already where the GLADU principles have been weakened. And I have the great details outlined here, you know, in technical legal jargon, but I'm not going to go through it. I just want you to remember that they have been weakened. That's not right. Then that leads me to the victims. And we did have, just in the last little while, the court case of Cindy GLADU, who was a, you know, it's even hard to talk about that particular case. She was a sex trade worker. She was found dead in a bathtub with an 11-centimeter laceration in her uterus, in her vagina. That vagina was actually used as court evidence. I don't think there's ever been a case in the country where a woman's bodily parts were used in a court case. It was dehumanizing. The person who was charged, I don't know what the exact charge was, got away with it. There's been an appeal. It's going to come back. That was just absolutely horrific. And earlier I had been thinking about, in terms of the missing and murdered Indigenous women, there has to be some way when an Indigenous woman like Cindy GLADU comes before the courts in a case like that where she's murdered or she's beaten or whatever, too often the judge or the jury is not sympathetic. And the sentence that's handed out is not as strong as it should be. We look back to, in my case, the event that I remember most is Helen Betty Osborne in Manitoba. That was in the 1970s, and that's when I was a young girl, and I'm thinking, this teenager is murdered by 4 white men, and it takes 16 years before finally they're brought to justice, and then the justice is practically nothing. The community kind of banded together and didn't want the trial to proceed. They kind of hid it all within the community. So in the Senate, there was a bill that was talking about compensation for victims of crime, and I tried to get them to listen to about what can be done when it's an Aboriginal woman who's the victim. And I was told, and I won't say who, said, well, you cannot make a special category. You cannot make a special category for Aboriginal women. We're all equal, so therefore you cannot make a category. And I'm thinking, oh God, what do we do now? Then, lo and behold, we have a bill not that long ago. It's a private member's bill on special aggravating factors for public transport operators. It barely got any mention at all in the Senate. It just went bing, bing, bing. I barely even knew it was there. because there were no long speeches on it. And what it basically has done is passed. It's now law. Anyone who's a public transport worker, like a bus driver, taxi driver, whatever, if they're assaulted, the judge has to take into account the fact that their occupation was an aggravating factor, and therefore a maybe more harsh sentence should be applied to send a message. So I'm thinking, well, how come we can make this a special category when we couldn't for Aboriginal women? So now I'm thinking, and I'm hoping you'll help me out here somehow, how do we make that a special category? And so maybe now we need to proceed and say, okay, if it's an Aboriginal woman who's in the court system, somehow we have to make that a special category. Or if the woman is a sex trade worker, can't that be an aggravating factor? Because oftentimes sex trade workers are not seen as full human beings. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and I'm hoping that together we can push this forward and we can start to create change for those women who've gone missing, for those women who deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dyck, Lillian Dyck, for bringing your heart and your mind to this issue, and for those words. And it's appropriate that you raised a number of those issues because we do see them very inextricably linked. In fact, a conference that some of you will remember in 2001 that we held just 3 weeks after the event that most people think of in 2001 was a conference called From Victimization to Criminalization, Women's Resistance. And it really is fundamental that when we're talking about the same issues that lead to women being criminalized are some of the very same issues that first have resulted in them being victimized. And so it's very important to remember those issues, and so thank you for that. In terms of the agenda, I'm going to, well, I always forget to do this. I like giving gifts, but I like when they're not right in front of me, sometimes I don't see them. So I have gifts for all the people who kindly joined us, and the gifts I have, that I'm throwing around up here, are 2 books, one for each of the 5 wonderful folks who helped us start out today. And they are, one is a book of poetry that was put together by a young Mi'kmaq woman who I first met at the Prison for Women, who is an incredible young woman who was first victimized, marginalized, was institutionalized in a mental health facility, and then was shipped to the Prison for Women when the local community and the community did not have sufficient resources. And so she's written a book called Behind Closed Doors, Faces Behind Multiple Personality Disorders. And as I say, she's a young Mi'kmaq woman who had really wanted to be here. She's also an artist and a mom, and she wanted to send this as gifts, so these are gifts to each of you. As well, Yvonne Johnson will be here speaking tomorrow. She's here, but I kept them all up because, well, Air Canada really kept us all up. But anyway, that's a whole other story that we'll talk about tomorrow. And Yvonne Johnson is here, and she will be happy to sign books for you. And Yvonne Johnson is the first Indigenous woman sentenced to life imprisonment with no parole eligibility for 25 years. And she and Rudy Weeb wrote about her life. It's often described as writing about her crime. It's not at all that, but it's an incredible life. And these books are jumping out of my hands, so I'm going to deliver them in a few minutes. But first I have to say a couple more things. One of the things that I really love about this work is you never know what's going to come next. So I always say, whenever we're planning something around a jail, and the students who are in the prison law class, I said, this is what we're planning, but who knows what'll happen. And be ready for, if I suddenly switch gears, it's not just because, sometimes I'm kind of loopy and I get a new idea on the fly, but sometimes things have changed. And one of the things that changed this morning, you'll see in the program that we were going to have the Strong Woman Drummers. The Strong Woman Drummers are on their way. and they will join us, but they aren't, as you can tell, aren't here yet. So they're going to join us and drum at lunchtime, and they'll probably be out by the segregation cell and join us, and we were very, very pleased that they'll be coming to join us. I think it's important to also know that when we managed to get women out from prison to come here, and I want to thank Sue and her team. Sue is the Sue, stand up so people can see. Sue Delanoy is the executive director here in Saskatchewan. And they worked very hard to ensure women could get here. When women come and they're staying overnight, they, unlike you, even though the residences may be hot, they're not jail cells. To come here, they have to be jailed for the night. They don't get to come and enjoy all the festivities that we're able to do in the evenings. And they have still agreed to come, despite all of the invasive security that they, and I would say unnecessary security, they need to undergo. They will undergo that because they wanted to come and join us. And they're on their way, so please do, at lunchtime, the food will be provided. Grab your food and come and join us and enjoy their drumming. We're very much looking forward to them being here. As well, we will have, before each session, there will be someone with a volunteer or staff or both, or interested member or former woman with lived experience or former imprisoned woman who will participate and be with a project that we'll also have a workshop on called The Story Behind the Masks. And the story behind the masks, Sue kindly gave me a blurb to let you know what it is. And this won't surprise many of you, but to orient it is, the story behind the mask is women in society often live behind a variety of masks. This is not different from many women in jails and prisons across Canada. A local Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan has been exploring with women in a variety of places the idea behind the need for masks. The masks we wear in society, different circumstances, and especially while imprisoned. They've then taken this mask concept into a variety of institutions, this is Elizabeth Fry has, and talked about the issue and talked about this conference. And in preparation for this conference, many, many women who we would have loved to have had here today, they would have loved to have been here today. They will be here in spirit and through their masks, but many of them aren't able to be here in person. And so to remedy to this, Elizabeth Fry Saskatchewan, Sue and her team asked the women to tell their story and to be represented at the conference in some symbolic way. They then explored this through creative art and writing. And today, through their art masks and through their stories, we remember the many women locked up behind bars, and their stories will be told. We'll honor their presence and not forget our pledge to them that nothing for them is without them. And so perhaps you could start with one. Sue, do you want to do that one? Okay, hold up the masks so you'll see them. So as you start your session, there'll be a mask. Someone will come to the session, and I'd ask you to honor the women who aren't able to be with us today, and the session will start with a presentation of the mask. Now, do you want to present one now? Sure. Okay.
Sometimes I feel mad, I want to cry or even scream. Change is hard. Life is easy, minute, silent hiding behind my mask. Sometimes I'm okay. Sometimes I feel like a robot. I know I'm growing. I know I will bloom. I know I will find my way. Someday, somehow, sometimes. Life is too short for us not to try.
So thank you very much, and we're going to break in a minute. There are refreshments outside the door, and then in the program you'll see the room numbers of the sessions so that you can go to. Sessions in this room and room 30 may be live streamed, so if there's anybody who doesn't want if you're asking a question or you don't want that broadcast, just be aware of that. You may want to ask it privately in a break. And if you have any questions, feel free to look for the women with the pink bows. They're part of the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan, and we thank you for being here, as well as Lori, who many of you have spoken to or have corresponded with, and is Lori in the room? No, I don't see her. Lori is the person who is assisting me here. Catherine from the CAFE's office is also here, and I want to thank all of you who participated in putting this on. You've done a fabulous job. So look forward to this and look forward to seeing you around. And I'll plug John, Elder John Sugar. I wanted to say I've had the privilege of going to 3 of the shows at the center, and they are fabulous. So thank you very much for your work in that area too.